Hello, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, hunting season is upon us, and I know many of our viewers out there, the lawful and responsible gun owners in Washington State, are out enjoying some of the best of what Washington has to offer. But did you guys know what some of the most common firearm violations that Department of Fish and Wildlife finds while out in the field? Well, today we're going to hear directly from them. We have Captain Eric Anderson with the Department of Fish and Wildlife here to explain to us what are some of the most common firearm violations found while hunting. Okay, before we get rolling, you guys know the drill. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button down below. If you want to stay up to date on issues related to your Second Amendment rights, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below. Click the little bell logo if you want to be notified when we post new videos. And most importantly, let's keep the comments and discussions coming. That's how we're going to make sure that we get our video out to more lawful and responsible gun owners like yourself. All right, Captain Anderson, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to all of our viewers out there?
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. My name is Eric Anderson, and I am a captain with the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife Enforcement Program. And I have been with Fish and Wildlife for, almost 27 years, of which 25 have been an officer. And so I still refer to myself as a game warden. So even though I'm kind of up the ladder now and more office bound, I've been out in the field enforcing, fish and wildlife laws for all that time. And a little background, I am an avid hunter and firearms enthusiast myself. So anytime I can do to help clarify rules and keep people on the straight and narrow, I will do it wholeheartedly.
Well, we appreciate you being here. And one of the big things that we're trying to do is create a community of lawful and responsible gun owners in Washington State. And obviously, we know that this state has some fantastic natural resources. It's a great place for hunting and fishing. The outdoor activities in Washington is really some of the best in the entire country. You were kind enough to go through your years of expertise and come up with 6 of the most common firearm violations that your officers run into the field. And so I thought today we could take a few minutes and talk about those in order, and you can help educate our viewers here as to what you're seeing out in the field and what they need to do to ensure that they remain lawful and responsible gun owners. Are you good with that?
Excellent. Yes, absolutely.
All right. So right here, number one, and I know this to be a problem too, and this is a violation of RCW 77-15-460. That is the loaded shotgun or rifle in an automobile. Why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, it's a simple rule, and it's a safety rule on top of that. You can't have a loaded firearm in a motor vehicle, transporting it in it or anywhere. So, and a lot of people think, well, if I just have a cartridge in the magazine, then it's not considered loaded. It's only if it's in the chamber. No, you can't have that in the magazine or in the chamber of the firearm whatsoever. Now, you can have a detachable magazine, such as, as people sometimes call them a clip, and other firearms, people get upset with that. But if you have the magazine and it's detached from the firearm, you can have that. That can be when you see the animal, park the vehicle, jump out, put that in, jump, and you can go hunting with it. But you just can't have anything in the attached magazine, in the firearm, or in the chamber.
Okay.
It also applies to muzzle loaders. You can, and now this is where the anomaly is. In a muzzle loader, it is not considered loaded if it is not primed. So if you don't have the musket cap, you don't have the 209, you don't have the percussion cap, or you don't have powder in the flash pan, that is not considered loaded.
Okay. And we're talking about shotguns and rifles, because we do know under Washington law, you can have a loaded firearm, handgun in the car, so long as you have a valid concealed pistol license and you're carrying in accordance with that law.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the frequency of this violation, I get the impression that this is a violation that your officers frequently encounter.
Yes, frequency all depends on the given opening day of deer season, but,
right.
I'd have to say that we probably encounter it on a 5 to 10% frequency.
Okay.
It's one of those things you can go as an officer. I wouldn't go a single deer season where I didn't have a few loaded firearms in vehicles that people did.
Okay. And for those firearms that use detachable magazines, they can keep the magazine right next to the firearm. Exactly. They just cannot have it in the firearm whatsoever, correct?
No, there, yes, absolutely. Now there is one firearm that is an anomaly, and I want to say, I can't remember the make. It was a Browning, where the detachable magazine actually slides onto a drop plate, and that actually has to be removed from that drop plate.
Okay.
It can't be, it still can't be physically attached to the gun, even though I know it's an anomaly. It's not up in the magazine well. It still cannot, that detachable magazine has to be fully detached from the gun for it to be legal.
Okay, that's great. Great information. Now, moving along, violation, another common violation, the violation of RCW 77-15-400, unlawful hunting of wild birds, violation of a rule requiring non-toxic shock. Tell us about that.
Well, the big thing on that, and it, mostly everybody can think about it around migratory waterfowl, duck hunting and goose hunting. Lead shot has been outlawed for years in that realm. So you got to use either bismuth or steel or tungsten. There's a bunch of the non-toxic shot that is available for you to use when waterfowl hunting. And you can't even possess the lead shot while you're waterfowl hunting. So that's one of the things we're starting to see is somebody forgets and they've got a box of pheasant loads with them in their blind bag in the thing. And it's really tough because, you know, maybe they didn't intend to use it, but it's there and it's the possession of it at that given time. Also, make sure if you're going out to do upland bird hunting, to check the regulations, because we do have some upland bird areas where non-toxic shock is required even for upland birds. Okay. So I urge folks to refer to the both the waterfowl and the upland game bird pamphlets when they're seeing that, to see if they require non-toxic when they're going out pheasant hunting or upland bird hunting on certain wildlife areas.
Well, now let me ask you this, because one of the things we talk about frequently at Washington Gun Law is it's one thing to know what you have the right to do. It's also another thing to know about what you should do. And you're an avid outdoorsman yourself. So it would appear to me that using non-toxic shock in all instances, whether you're required to do so or not so, is really the responsible thing to do if we want to preserve our natural resources. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely do agree with that. You know, it's hard to imagine, but I have actually, I'm a waterfowl hunter myself, and I have actually come across ducks that have lead shot in their crops. And again, you wouldn't think that lead shot that sinks to the bottom of a lake could get into it. They do. They pick it up. Same thing in those. You wouldn't think out in a field, okay, well, there's not going to be waterfowl out here. Yeah, no, ducks will stop and they will graze on the grass. And it's amazing. They pick up that stuff in their crop because it is how they basically chew their food. And it has to do with all upland birds too. They can pick it up. So it is really responsible to do the non-toxic for all of them.
That's great. That's great to know. Okay. So another common violation, RCW 77-15-410, unlawful hunting of big game. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Well, again, that could actually be, it could be a firearms violation, or it could be, you know, you're out of season. I still consider it, take the time, if you're going to go out hunting, to look at the pamphlet, ensure what GMU that you are in, ensure the dates, and ensure the lawful animals that you can harvest when you're going. Because I'll just be straight, when we encounter somebody that shoots the wrong animal, usually we confiscate their firearm, because the firearm is implicated in what they did. So you want to make sure that you're all the seasons are set, timing, what you can harvest, and that you're complying with when we start talking about the other firearms, that you're also not using an unlawful firearm in it, that you're having the right caliber, and we'll talk about that down, and that you're not doing anything with the equipment on it, such as a scope that has a laser projection on it. You can use a red dot scope, but you just can't have anything that projects the beam onto the animal. That's
right.
visible.
The difference between a red dot when you're actually looking through like a holographic red dot versus where you actually have a laser pointer at the end and you put the red dot on the actual target, physically on the target.
Yep.
Okay. You also mentioned unlawful hunting of wild animals under 77-15-430. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, and I included those because, you know, it covers all. we have big game, we have small game, we have wild animals, and there's hunting regulations for all of them. And so again, if you use an unlawful firearm to hunt a wild animal, it could be confiscated if you're in violation of that.
Could that firearm not only be confiscated, but subject to forfeiture under RCW 941098?
Absolutely. That we do have the forfeiture process. If you are, number one, if you're found guilty of it in a court of law, I'm sorry, I jumped about here. Actually, the forfeiture process is a civil process, right, separate from the criminal process. So you could actually be found guilty under the criminal violation of the illegal hunting, but then we would go through a civil process for the forfeiture of the firearm as well.
Right. That's right. And for our listeners, again, depending on the grounds for forfeiture, if that occurs within a 1 year date of when you have to renew your concealed pistol license, certain forfeitures can actually disqualify you from being able to apply for a concealed pistol license. And does it have any effect on the ability to get future hunting licenses and such as that?
The civil part doesn't.
Okay.
But the conviction on of the hunting violation does. We have, so unlawful hunting a big game, if it's in the first degree, it automatically, if we are convicted of it, you lose your hunting privileges for 2 years.
Okay.
If you have multiple violations of our hunting code, RCW 77, if you have 3 and 10, you will be suspended for 2 years at least. Okay. And it also depends. I mean, we've had situations of, we're not talking about your folks here, but serial poachers where we have suspended their licenses for up to 10 years or up to permanently as well.
Sure. For serial poachers and such as that, people who just do not want to comply with the law in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about a couple. This one kind of drew my attention. 7715-450, spotlighting big game. Tell me about that.
Well, that's when somebody, the most part of that I'm going to say is when somebody gets excited and fails to abide by the hunting hours and they're coming in, it's opening day of deer season and they're driving into the unit and a deer jumps out in the headlights and they decide to shoot it. That's spotlighting. You can't use artificial light to illuminate game to harvest it.
Okay.
And so
that's all artificial light. So you can't be out there in hours of darkness with a high powered flashlight, spotlighting big game to take your shot or anything like that.
Yep. No, it has to be natural ambient light. Natural ambient light. I can't say it any better than that. That's okay. So
can people use night vision scopes if we're operating within the correct hunting hours?
Nope. Actually, night vision scopes. And I think I quoted the RCW.
Yeah, we're going to get to that, but since we were on that topic, but yeah, no night vision scopes.
No night vision scopes.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, let's get to some of these other, because then you give, so for our listeners out there, as you know, we find a lot of our firearm restrictions, hunting and fishing, wildlife restrictions in the RCWs. But in addition to that, we have Washington administrative codes, and Washington administrative codes will further define some of the obligations and rights that we have under the revised code of Washington. So you mentioned some very important ones for our lawful and responsible hunters and fishers out there. Number one, WAC 220-413-010, hunting before or after hours. Let's talk about hunting hours. What are they typically, and what do you see in the way of violations?
I'm going to say the layman's term is a half hour before official sunrise and a half hour before official sunset, or after official sunset, excuse me. And we post them. When you go hunting, open up the big game pamphlet, and there is an entire page that is devoted to, it blocks it out by week, starting in August all the way through, I'm going to say up into March. And it gives you the official hunting hours for both Eastern Washington and Western Washington, because they are slightly different.
Okay.
And again, it's follow that timeline exactly. If it says that legal hunting hour starts at 7:35 a.m., don't be pulling the trigger at 7:25.
and that's an important distinction. If legal hunting doesn't start until 7:35, you can be out looking for and tracking animals much sooner than that. You cannot take a shot, however, until legal hunting hours have commenced. Correct?
Exactly. And there's a little nuance here for waterfowl hunters. take a look it's a little different. And I'm off the top of my head, I want to say that waterfowl times are slightly different. I said the layman's term is half hour after legal sunset. That is different for waterfowl, and it's also different for the opening day of waterfowl.
Okay, great to know. WAC 220-414-010, hunting equipment restrictions. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, pretty simple. What we were just talking about. We're wide open with the type of scopes and sights that you can use on your firearms. The one thing that you just can't have is, like we were saying, is something that projects a visible beam onto the animal. Can't have a red dot laser pointer that points, this bolt's going to hit here on the side of the animal.
Right.
Can't have that. Can't use night vision, and you can't use thermal vision.
Okay. And then you probably can't use any other illumination then, right? If you have a flashlight or something like that attached, if you're hunting with a AR-10 type platform or anything like that, no artificial illumination at the end, right?
Yep. Nope. That would be part of it.
Okay. WAC 220-414-020, unlawful methods for hunting. And this, I think, has a lot to do with also the caliber in which we're using. Is that right?
Yeah. The big thing is for all big game in the state of Washington, with one exception, you have to use a 24 caliber or larger, basically a 243 Winchester and up. The one exception is you can hunt cougars with a 22 caliber center fire rifle. That is the one exception. So if you're going out for deer, bear, mountain goat, moose, all that, you got to have at least a 24 caliber or higher.
Okay. Do you run into those types of violations frequently, or is most people out there with the correct firepower?
That's been a rule in Washington for a long time. And so I want to say in my career, I think I've seen it once or twice. And it was just based on somebody new getting into the sport, and they literally picked up a AR and went to go hunting with it and didn't know that it wasn't legal for deer hunting. So.
Okay. A couple follow-up questions here on some shotguns. First of all, let's talk about the number of shells that a shotgun can legally hold if a person's out there hunting.
Okay.
What's the correct answer? Depending on
right what they're hunting with the shotgun.
Okay.
So if they are using the shotgun to hunt big game, if they're using slugs or buckshot in it, it can hold as many cartridges as you can put in it. You can remove the plug, and you could have, some have had the extended magazine up to eight cartridges in. That's absolutely perfect for big game. If you're hunting birds, no, it can only hold 3 cartridges. It can only have one in the chamber and 2 in the mag. And
if the firearm is designed to hold more, it's not just that you merely loaded 3, you actually have to plug so that it is only capable of holding 3, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And then are there, and other than the non-toxic shot shells that we talked about, any other restrictions with shotgun shells that we should be aware of?
Oh, off the top of my head, I want to say you can't hunt turkey with larger. Take a look at the turkey reg. Yeah, I'm pretty good, but we've got 4 pamphlets. So take a look at the turkey regs. I'm pretty sure that you can't hunt it with shot that's larger than 4.
Okay. I won't hold you to that though.
Okay, appreciate it.
All right. Listen, my last question for you, Captain Anderson, is this. You mentioned earlier, check the pamphlets, check the rules, check the regulations, and the lawful and responsible gun owner, the lawful and responsible hunter will do exactly that. Where can people go where they can readily check the regulations and the laws to make sure they're operating within the confines of those?
There's old school. Every place that sells hunting and fishing licenses gives out. You can get them. I just happen to have one here at my desk, a Washington hunting pamphlet. They are there free of charge. Take several. I always say the natural environment of our hunting pamphlet is on the floor of a pickup truck. That's where they tend to breed and stay.
Yeah.
The other thing they can do, go right on the internet, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, go to the hunting page, and they can download the regs. This is an incredibly mobile society now, and you can download them on your phone and keep them there with you to access via your smartphone, or do them via on the computer as well.
Great. Captain Anderson, I want to thank you very much for your time. And if there any final advice you want to leave the lawful and responsible gun owner here in Washington State?
Oh, keep doing what you're doing, folks. Again, big advocate of hunters and the shooting sports. Can't stress enough that the fact that the Pittman-Robertson funds from people that purchase guns and ammunition and do that contribute to the conservation of fish and wildlife around the nation. Those funds come into the departments for perpetuating it, for people to hunt and fish, and also for people just to enjoy it. And the big thing, read the pamphlets and take a moment before you decide to do it. I can't tell you how many violations are inadvertent because they just didn't take that little extra bit of time to verify the date, verify what they were doing. And in the long run, if you take that deep breath and think about it first, you stay out of trouble.
Well, we sure do appreciate you bringing all your years of expertise to the table today and helping us educate the lawful and responsible gun users out there in the state of Washington. Captain Anderson, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, sir.
Well, again, I want to thank Captain Eric Anderson of the Department of Fish and Wildlife for his expertise. Listen, you may have more questions about hunting violations or anything related to your Second Amendment rights. And if you do, don't ever hesitate to contact us at WashingtonGunLaw.com. Or, of course, you can call us directly at 425-765-0487. Listen, part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we preach all the time here at Washington Gun Law, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.